Hi everyone, my name is Madhura, and I have here today with us my guest Sindhoor. And before I interview her, I would like to introduce myself briefly. I'm a trauma aware therapist and a visual artist. My work is informed by my lived experience of surviving trauma and living with autoimmune conditions. So I bring all of that to the work I do with my clients and work I do with people. Which brings me to why I'm so interested in Sindhur's work. You'll find out soon. And I've been wanting to connect with Sindhur for a few years because I've been following her work and the overlap of the work we do because both of us work with people and Sindhu works with people who have animal companions, and that's deeply personal for me because I grew up with dogs and I have such a deep connection with my animal companions. So that's why we have Sindhur here. And I'd like to formally introduce her because I want to get the introduction right because this is someone that has a considerable body of work, and she's been doing this work for a few years. She brings in her personal lived experience as well as her academic training and her practice in research. So I want to read out so I get it right. Sindhur is a canine behavior consultant, a canine myotherapist, an anthrozoologist, and an engineer by qualification. She researches free living dogs in Bangalore, India. She is a TEDx speaker and the author of the book Dog Knows. Sindhu quit her corporate life to find a career in working with dogs after her dog Nishi met with a serious accident and needed special physical and emotional care. She worked as a behavior and myotherapy consultant for companion dogs, but soon discovered her passion for studying free living dogs in India. She has presented her findings at several major international conferences in the US and UK, and she has also conducted seminars in Europe, UK, and South America. She has been invited as an expert on several podcasts, including a few on the prestigious NPR radio, and she has maintained a weekly column on dog behavior in the Bangalore Mirror for 2 years. National Geographic calls hers a great mind in the bookazine genius of dogs. She is currently the principal and director of Barks. Barks offers a unique UK accredited Level 4 diploma on canine biosociopsychology and applied ethology. While she wears many hats, Sindhu's favorite role has been being a mommy to two amazing dogs, Nishi and Chiru, who have since passed, and she considers them her inspiration and greatest teachers.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I mean, I have also been following your work for the last few years, and you know this, I have reached out to you multiple times saying that, oh my God, there's so much overlap between what you say and what I say. And we have known intuitively that we are somewhat on converging paths here. So this conversation is very exciting to me as well. I've been waiting for this.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah. So, as we begin, I just wanted to maybe start with a question what anthrozoology means, because I think a lot of people
Yeah.
are not aware what it means. So,
Yeah.
can you say a little bit about that?
Yeah. So anthrozoology is the course that I did was from Exeter University in the UK, and it was a offering from the anthropology department, but it's a subsection of anthropology which looks at the specific spaces of interaction between humans and animals. So it could be human animal entanglements across industries, across religion, across different geographies, different across history. How have we been with them in the past and how are we with them now? Across media, how they're represented in our media and in our textbooks, in our culture, so on and so forth. So every space that has a human animal entanglement of any sort is a site of inquiry for us, and we try to learn about it. We try to theorize about it. For me, there's a subsection of that which is of particular interest, which is free living dogs. And the lives of free living dogs is very tightly tied with that of human beings. They don't exist if human beings don't exist. And in a country like India, I am willing to argue that humans are likely not going to be able to exist if those dogs don't exist. That is more controversial, but I do feel that there is some component of that, that our natural histories have taught us that we have co-evolved. We have evolved to thrive in each other's presence. And so dogs play a very critical role in a country like India. And so we do have a lot to lean on each other. And so that is the space that I'm very interested in, and sort of to bring in my animal behavior lens as well to examine these spaces very closely.
Yeah, yeah. And also, Sindhu, you use a very interesting term, free living dogs, which a lot
Yeah.
of people, they're just beginning to understand it, but most people don't know what you mean when you say free
Yeah.
living dogs. Can you say a bit about that?
Yeah. So this is a sad kind of fallout of so much of our language, and language utilization is a result
Yeah.
of the Western sort of perspective and the lens that they look at. And so a lot of the dogs that they see are either owned dogs that they deem as property, or dogs that have strayed away from that ownership, the place that is designated for them, and they've strayed away from that place, and therefore they're considered stray dogs. But the dogs that we see in India do not fit under that category. They have not strayed from anywhere. They are not ex-pet dogs. They're not ex-captive dogs that have run away and are running amok. They evolved in this space, have been living in this space for multiple generations, brought up by dogs, and they are valid inhabitants of the space. So the word stray would be very incorrect to describe them. So you could call them free roaming dogs as well, but free roaming usually refers to freedom of movement, not necessarily freedom from ownership. So for instance, if you have a chicken farm and you allow the chicken to run around, that would be free roaming or free ranging chicken, but you still are the owner of those animals. But that is not the case with these animals. They're not wild, they're not feral, they're not stray, they're not free ranging. So what are they? They are free living dogs. But though I use that word where I need to be technically accurate, my preferred term is still streeties. That's what we call them. That's a term of endearment, and that's just close to my heart. And my ideas flow more freely when I use that term.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, thank you for explaining that.
Yeah.
And also, I think people who live in other countries sometimes don't understand when we say streeties, because a lot of these cold countries don't have free living dogs like we do. And what you said was so interesting, because you said they're not free roaming, but they're free living, because they're
Yeah.
really autonomous
Yeah.
animals living, co-living, coexisting in our
Yeah.
community spaces.
Yeah.
Anyone who's grown up in Bangalore, in cities in India, would know that, we have a dog in the neighborhood who's, everyone knows, and who
Yeah.
sleeps in the street, who also sort of guards the street. And I had,
Yes.
in my street, there are two dogs who would walk me home from the metro station. And I didn't even feed them. Like, they were my
Yeah.
companions.
Yeah.
So I think they're free living animals with autonomy, with preferences. They have their own personalities.
Yeah.
As you know, and as your work clearly, I mean, I'm sure your work covers all of this. And it's so important for people to know this, because it changes the way they are viewed, right? When
Yeah.
when we look at an animal, and instead of calling it a stray,
Yeah.
and the ownership, like you said, is so interesting, Sindhu. Here in Taiwan, when I was learning traditional Mandarin, they said, well, you can say my husband, my daughter, but when you refer to an animal, the reference is that of an object.
Mm.
So the dog is something you own. A dog is not your companion.
Yeah.
And that's really struck me, for that matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think they go beyond companions. And, a lot of people are afraid to say this, but I'm not, because I ground my claim in science, which is that they are our family members. We
Yes.
generate the same hormones that a mother generates when she sees a child. Oxytocin, this is an oxytocin mediated
Yeah.
relationship. We do have evidence, scientifically studied evidence that they bond with us in the same way that children bond with adults. So the same attachment theory is used there.
Yes.
We co-regulate with them, especially women are known to co-regulate
Mhm.
much better. In social co-regulation is a bigger part of our lives, and we do that very well with dogs. I have been the last few years, I lost my husband 5 years ago, and I lost the main companion with who I would co-regulate. But the dogs played such a significant role for me. So every time I struggle, I would just go sit out with the dogs and put a hand on them, and I kept thinking, why am I doing this? I am definitely feeling better. I'm definitely feeling less agitated and dysregulated, but why is it? And it's there. The science is just clear. It's there. So they are family members. There's a notion of chosen family. Family doesn't have to be somebody you're born to or into. And so they are what I would call a part of a multi-species family. So you could have a multiracial family, and similarly, you can have a multicultural family. You can have a multi-species family, and we
Yes.
don't have to be afraid to actually do that. And if you see in India, for instance, the language is so interesting, right? So
Yeah.
in when you talk to people who feed these dogs, many
Mm.
of them will refer to them as bacha, my child. They're not even,
Yes.
they don't, and it's so confusing sometimes. Are you referring to a human? Like, who are you referring to? But they just insist on calling them, oh, mera bacha, right? Like, and I'm very comfortable with that language, because that is how they are experiencing this,
Yes.
and that is a fair thing. And I think I
Yes.
want to also add that something that people don't realize about these dogs, the word stray is so reductionist. It doesn't give the full picture. These dogs play a very significant role in the ecosystem. They thrive in this ecosystem because they play a role. So I live in a village now, and here we have a lot of rats and snakes and all kinds of critters. And when I was asking around in the village, because I've come from the city, I don't know much about village existence. I'm only learning in the last 5 years. I've been learning. And so I asked them, what do you do about rats? I have like such a big rat problem, and that attracts snakes, right? So, and this is not just a village problem. Whitefield also, when I was living there, had
Mhm.
snakes come in
Yeah.
into my, villa, like fancy villa, right? So I was asking these guys, and they look at me with this, duh, this is so simple. Just keep dogs and cats. It's so simple. It's just a no brainer. And this is something that we have seen repeatedly. If you try to remove dogs in mass, there is a sudden increase in the population of rats and snakes, and
Yeah.
rats carry diseases that
Yeah.
spread to human beings, including rabies, leptospirosis, and plague. Let's not forget plague, right? That's
Yes.
the Black Death. They carry that. And so they carry the fleas that carry that. And rats, or I mean, dogs are natural buffers around human beings
Oh,
to keep
yes.
away all these animals.
Yeah.
And so they play this is not just them existing in our space. They are existing in a space that is together ours. It's a co-becoming.
Yes.
Together we
Yes.
create the space that is perfect for both of us. And so they are active agents in shaping the space for us and
Yes.
themselves.
And they're keeping balance, right? Because this
Yes.
is so important. Because my Jiva, my dog,
Yeah.
he's almost 9 now. He lives with my mother in Bangalore. So Jiva is a very smart rat hunter. Because we
Yeah.
live in a very busy part of the city, and the vegetable vendors leave a lot of waste. So a lot of rats come and they climb up the
Yeah.
pipes, and they invade my mother's garden. And
Yeah.
I've seen Jiva, I mean, he's not always very successful, but
Yeah.
if he's there, I've seen him hunt them. Like he hunts, he
Yeah.
kills them.
Yeah.
So they do keep balance. And
Yeah.
to the beginning part of what you shared, Sindhu, which is very moving for me to hear, I'm in absolute agreement with you, is that animals are family members and they are like children.
Yeah.
But I discovered something a few years ago when I was in a constellation session where, we went in and, the facilitator turned around and said, who did you have as a child?
Yeah.
Who did you have with you? Who would you go to when you were scared? And the only being I could think of were my dogs. My
Yes.
dogs were My dogs taught me how to be more human than human beings did, because my environment was so unsafe growing up, and my dogs were the only safe
Yes.
beings. My family dogs are my siblings, and the
Yeah.
ones I adopted are really like my children. I've not had
Yeah.
human babies, so I absolutely agree with you. And they do, because what you said about attachment theory, there's a lot of research right now about that, and about how they co-regulate with our nervous systems, what they
Yes.
bring,
Yes.
what they pick up. They pick up, like my dog picks up way before I realized I'm upset.
Yeah.
He's already picked up that,
Yeah.
it's coming on. The grief is coming on, and and he would just come and comfort me. And also
Yeah.
around the time I have my period, he
Yeah.
would he would be a Velcro dog. Like, he would not leave my side, comfort me. And I
Yeah.
didn't pay attention to it, because I've
Yeah.
always been around dogs, and I just sort of took it for granted, because I was born and there were dogs at home. So I've always
Yeah.
taken this connection for granted. But
Yeah.
when I started engaging with your work, I started paying more attention to how he would respond. And they're so sensitive in the way they pick up language. They really
Mm.
understand you. And it's not
Yeah.
even verbal language. They're
No.
picking up on your heartbeat, your
Yeah.
breath rate. And I feel so confident, knowing that, even though my mother lives in Bangalore, next door to my sister on the same floor, there's access, people coming in, but my dog is always with my mother when she's at
Mm.
home.
Yeah.
And that gives me so much confidence that she has a companion. And
Yeah.
he's a baby, he's a protector, he's so many things. So
Yes.
I
Yeah.
just wanted to share that bit,
Yeah.
because just want people to understand. And also, people who've never had dogs
Yeah.
sometimes find it hard to see this aspect of having, a family member.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But it should not be a boundary that's hard to transcend. See, like you, I have not had children, but
yeah,
that does not mean that I cannot understand the love that a mother feels for a child. When I meet my family members, when I meet my cousins, who have children, and I see
yeah,
how they bond together, and it's beautiful. And the pain that they feel when their children hurt, the fear that they have for the safety of the children, these are things that I can relate to. I mean,
yeah,
these are just human emotions. And so
yeah,
I think it's important for us to, if some people who don't have dogs are not understanding it, it's because there are mental barriers that they have set up for themselves. And it's not about dogs. And that's, I think, something that they need to understand is, if you're choosing not to understand how I relate to a dog, that's not about your relationship with the dog. It's you are putting a wall between me and you. It's a human thing, right? You're putting up a wall
wow,
that is unnecessary. And your and my relationship will not evolve and get to a beautiful place if you choose to put up that wall simply because there's a dog in the picture. Forget it, right?
mm,
That's dog, human, whatever, forget it. Husband, parent, it's that I feel this extraordinary connection and love, and I have fears and hopes and things like that I feel towards another human being. And that is what you're relating to. You surely feel it towards somebody, and that is what we're relating to. That is what we're talking about. So yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, that's just so profound. It also makes me think of all these conflicts that happen in cities between dog feeders and, people who want to feed community animals, and also these apartment
Yeah,
complexes where people have objections. And what you're saying essentially is, it's a human to human conflict. It's not
absolutely.
about the dogs at all.
No,
If you
no,
look at
yeah,
it, yeah,
yeah. No,
yeah,
no, absolutely, 100%. So,
yeah,
my work started out with doing consultations for companion dogs, or pet dogs, as people call it. And
yeah,
I started seeing, as I started working more and more, I started seeing that in so many of the cases, the dog was simply holding up a mirror to a very human issue. So either the couple were, in tension with each other, or the family members, different family members, visiting members, are in tension with each other, or the human being who's caring for the dog is having work stress, that they're carrying home, or mental health issues, or whatever it is, right? There's usually something, those lines, I talk to these people, and after a while, I'm like, hold on, what's going on? And then I get the stories of, oh yeah, my father is an alcoholic, my husband is beating me, my, boss is stressing me out. Like all these very human stories started emerging, and I would sit back and I'm like, this is not a dog thing. I shouldn't. This is above my pay grade. I need to give you the number of somebody else to go talk to at this
Yeah.
point, because this is not a dog issue. And
Yeah.
what was interesting is, more recently, I've been working more with free living dogs or streeties. And this is something that we are seeing repeatedly, where we see conflict between, so-called dog-related conflict. Repeatedly, what we're seeing is it's a human-human conflict. These two neighbors are not getting along with each other, do not want to resolve their issues, do not want to have the conversations that they should be having, do not want to treat each other with empathy the way they should be doing. And instead, what they do, they blame the dog, they use the dog as an excuse. And this is not one side or the other. I've seen people on both sides of it do the same thing. And I've had to step back and say, no, you brought me in for the wrong reason. This is not a dog issue that I should be resolving here. You guys need to learn to talk to each other, your neighbors, your members of the community. When did we start becoming such an intolerant society, where we all expect that we don't have to make peace with neighbors that we disagree with? We're seem to be forgetting how to deal with people who we do not necessarily see eye to eye with. That is, at the end of the day, the essence of a community, isn't it? Nobody is going to see eye to eye. Learn to talk it out, guys. Don't use the law to go after each other. This is a conversation you're supposed to have. You're supposed to say, hey, come over, sit for chai and samosa, and let's talk. Right? Instead of doing that, we don't want to do that anymore. We don't want to even learn their names. We don't know our neighbors' names, but we are so good at fighting over WhatsApp. And I think that is really the problem. And every time we have run into issues like this, dogs become the scapegoat, animals become the scapegoat. And, the word scapegoat itself shows that, animals are used in that way. And sadly, that's what it really is.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
time for a great awakening, I think, for us to
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
we should learn to integrate with
Yeah.
community again. This is not acceptable.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's all about nervous systems, right? Because when I work
Yeah.
with people also, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Where one thing is to really zoom out and look at the systemic perspective of what's happening in the household. It's not the client who comes to me with the issues,
Yeah.
rarely the
Yeah.
person with the problem.
Yeah.
It's usually it's the whole system, the whole family dynamic, the financial situation, the environment they're living in, the country they're living in, the conflict zones, or so many things of the, like you said. And it's all about nervous systems, right? Because
Yeah.
if the dynamic at home or in your living environment is so there's so much conflict, and the adults, the ones who are supposed to be in charge, are not regulated, it's going to show up in the children.
Yeah.
And in your case, it's showing up in children, the
Dogs.
pet
Yeah.
dogs, the pets, cats and dogs. And I'm sure with
Yeah.
any pet would exhibit signs, but dogs are so attuned to us in such
Yeah.
a way, because evolutionarily we have bred them to be that way,
Yeah.
that they feel it. And of course they're going to have digestive issues, they're going to have behavioral issues, and they're going to act out and things like that, which is exactly what is happening to kids, Sindhoor. A
Yeah.
lot of children are being medicated.
Yeah.
They're being pathologized at a very young age,
Yeah.
without, not even for 1 minute, examining what is the dynamic at home.
Yeah.
How are the parents? What are their habits?
Yeah.
What is the support system available? Are there any grandparents? Is there extended family? What kind of violence, verbal, physical, is happening? And even children don't have the language to share. And I can't imagine, dogs will never be able to tell you
Yeah.
how their family members are behaving.
Yeah.
So it is something that even the therapy world is really facing a reckoning right now, in the way psychiatry has been practiced, which is also very colonial, right? If you look
Yeah.
at it from the Freudian psychoanalytic perspective, is that you make the person, the patient, the problem,
Yeah.
and you're fixing,
Yeah.
but you refuse to look at what else is happening in the surroundings. So at
Yeah.
this point, our nervous systems, and if we just learn to co-regulate and self-regulate and
Yeah.
find ways of enough windows of regulated selves, then we can interact with our neighbors.
Yeah,
We can
exactly.
have we can express healthy anger and have healthy debates and discussions,
Yeah,
and also build more safe communities if we took that much responsibility. But that's it's something that I don't want to preach from a soapbox over here, but it's something that we all um, um, need to work on, and it's something that we need to be looking at more and more, because even with physical ailments, autoimmune illness, it's all very systemic in nature. Is what my teacher also talks about, Gabor Mate talks about. To be well adjusted in an insane world is not a good sign. It's not a sign of adjustment. It's actually kind of
yeah,
insane. So if you're having something showing up, then we question what's wrong with the environment. And
yeah,
which also brings me to how people sort of, like you said, when they scapegoat free living animals, also they say, oh, this dog bit me, it attacked me out of nowhere. But it's rarely ever out of nowhere, unless
yeah,
the dog has rabies, and that's also very rare now, because
yeah,
rabies is not something that is very rampant in cities, especially cities like Bangalore, because there's more
yeah,
there are a lot of proactive activists, and the government also takes a little bit of initiative. I've seen that the neutering thing has happened very regularly in my neighborhood, in my part
yeah,
of the city. And even people who are working with animals sometimes are not aware how to read cues. See,
yeah,
they may be our companions and friends, but they're also a different species,
yeah,
and they have their boundaries too. And people
yeah,
forget consent, and people
yeah.
forget boundaries. So I have somebody tell me that they were feeding dogs, and they saw this mother dog who had given birth, and that dog was under the footpath. They have that
Drain, yeah, the
dogs
storm
like to
drain.
give birth there. Yeah, the
Yeah,
storm drain.
yeah,
They like to give birth there because it's like a cave. It's safe.
yeah.
So this person extended their hand inside that space to feed the dog and got bitten very badly.
Mm, yeah,
So the intention was pure, but you don't, like, when Jiva is under the bed, I ask
yeah,
for his permission if I can
yeah,
enter that space, because
yeah,
that's his cave.
yeah,
It's Can you say a little bit about how we misread and we don't understand how, to navigate this with animals? We forget
yeah,
sometimes that they have consent too, and they're
yeah,
animals. They can only say no by growling, snarling, or
yeah.
biting, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
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 sure. It's really sad to hear that story,
yeah,
because even
yeah,
as you started speaking and telling the story, my mind was,
yeah,
alarm bells were going. I was like, I know how the
yeah,
story ends. I know how the
yeah,
story ends, and it starts with a mother who has given birth. At there itself, I know how that story ends, right? Because I recently did a talk for a university with first year graduates coming in, and I was talking to them about safety precautions around animals, all animals. And this is something that we used to learn. Grandparents used to teach me. We used to go to the village and to visit my grandparents. He's a farmer in Malnad, and he would, at that time they were not helicopter parenting. They would let us, in our underwears, run around in the village, like go do whatever. Everything is too hot, and go do whatever. But some basics that they taught us, right? Never approach a eating animal, sleeping animal, unwell animal, mother with babies. Very simple. Eating, sleeping, unwell, animal with babies. So basic. This is what I talk about. I never approach these animals, whatever that animal is. Give a wide berth and walk away. Sadly, today we don't seem to have we don't have elders who are teaching us this common sense. This was just basic common sense. It's not somebody with an animal behavior degree who needs to come and teach you this, right? um and if this person had just applied that basic, which is there's a mother with a baby, wide berth, stay
yeah,
away. If you want to feed the animals, put the food away and you walk away. You should not be near that dynamic. That's period, right? And for what has happened today, unfortunately, and this is another issue with the way we are dealing with things, with the emergence of training And with the emergence of looking at animals as property that you own, there's also an influx of ego that comes in, because you have to now exhibit and exert your ownership, right? Because what does it mean to own? It's one thing for you to say, I own this animal, but it doesn't feed your ego enough for you to say it and for the animal not to reflect that. So what is a part of that ownership now? It is that you will obey and you will tolerate things that I expect you to tolerate. So training protocols these days have bizarre things like, when the animal's eating, go put your hand in the food. The dog should not bite you. The dog should learn not to bite you. Restrict where the dog sleeps, put the dog through things that they do not like, until the point where they shut down and they start accepting, okay, I will tolerate this that I do not like, I will tolerate. And that completes your dominance over this whole thing. That completes and demonstrates your great ownership, and which is a very colonial idea too, right? That's what
Yes,
colonies
yes.
did with
Yeah,
the colonists did with the colonies,
yeah,
demonstrating their ownership. See, they will obey what we say, and that's
yeah,
how we show that we own them. So that's something that has to be repeatedly reinforced to feed this beast within the
yeah,
so-called owner. And I
yeah.
think we have lost all that nuance, and so it has made it into everyday practice, where now we think that this is just good practice to do this. And so I think it's not a huge thing that when I talk about the college workshop that I did was like a 15-minute workshop, out of which, half of it was spent around safety protocols. And, I would try to get it in front of everybody. Just simply do not approach eating, sleeping,
Mm,
injured, unwell. And if an animal comes towards you, what you need to do is, we use this to teach children: be a tree, be a rock. So be a tree is you stand still, look down at your feet, tuck your limbs in, look down at your feet. So if an animal comes towards you and you're scared, don't flail your arms and run away or stare at the animal. Eye contact and staring is
yeah.
really bad. So look at your feet, tuck your arms and stay still.
Mm,
If you have fallen on the ground, be a rock, which is curl up into a ball, protect your neck and tummy.
correct.
And
Yeah,
the last one that I talk about is curving, which is, imagine there's a bubble around an animal. Always
yeah,
respect that bubble and walk around. Never walk straight up to an animal, even if
yeah.
that's an animal that you love and he loves
Yeah,
you. Never walk up straight to them. Walk in that
yeah.
bubble around the animal.
Mm,
These are basics. And I
yeah.
wish that everybody understood this. I wish that this was part of primary
Yeah.
school education. I think we can
Yes.
stop a lot of bites.
Yes.
But yeah. And then the other thing that I also kind of caught on that you mentioned that I thought we should also talk about is, I think so much of this kind of therapy
Mm,
habits that we have, bad habits that we've picked up from the therapy world of things, of not just pathologizing the individual. So there are a couple of things, right? One is, in pathologizing the individual, we're cutting the individual off from the interconnectedness that they're part of. We do not fall sick and we do not heal in isolation. We have fallen sick because of everything around us, and we heal with the help of everything around us. By
yes.
separating that out, I think it's hugely important. The same thing with dogs. When a dog bites, it's because of what has been inflicted on the dog, and the dog's recovery into a non-biting state is also going to happen because of everything around.
Yes.
So there is an interconnectedness that we can't ignore, and every unwell element in that interconnectedness makes the others unwell too. So we can't turn our backs on those who are struggling. That's just, you cannot have somebody with struggling with a mental health issue in the house and say, man, it's your deal, right? You go take medicines, you go do therapy, and it's your baggage to carry, your monkey, your circus, not mine. You can't do
We are
that.
not going to change anything
Yes,
else. We are not
yes.
going to change ourselves, but you get medicated.
You get help and you sort this out, and if you
Yeah.
don't sort it out, you're at fault, right? That
Yeah.
individualization and that isolation,
Yes.
big part of what you're going through. And I don't even say this from a generational thing, right? Like, my late husband and I, quite honestly, we got together when we were very, very young, as so we were kind of kids ourselves at that time. And he just as I didn't know what I was dealing with, and he also didn't know what I was dealing with or what he was dealing with, right? But without realizing it, without intending to, with a lot of love in our hearts, he caused and made some of my issues worse, and I did the same to him. We made each other's issues worse because we didn't have awareness. And that is how these things evolve. It is like a tree that is kind of, two trees growing around each other type of thing, right? And so to untangle it, we do need, I mean, we're not unentangling it. We're not doing that. And that was the other thing that I was kind of coming to, which is the goal of therapy is fix it. So this very goal oriented way of looking at things, that there's a perfect ideal outcome and that you have to work towards this outcome and you have to arrive there and you have to emerge this shining new person, right? Which is not really what it is. Now I know, after so long, I am an imperfect person and I always will be. And perhaps this is what it is. I am broken in certain parts and this is my kintsugi, right? Like I have been, my fracture is my beauty. It is my identity. It
All
is,
of us, isn't
yes,
it? Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. It
Yeah.
is the ugly and the beauty together is part of it. What we want at the end of the day, what therapy should have achieved for me, or what the help that I need, is not about creating a perfect version of myself and a goal to arrive at, but figuring out how do I make this journey with this person more tolerable, more beautiful? How can I focus more on what is working for me here? And how do I make this feel less difficult on both of us? How do
Yes.
we start fixing today, not fix something to the future, right? How do we
Yeah.
start making this a little bit more full of glimmers and, little less
Yeah.
doom and gloom? And that's the same thing, I think, with dogs as well. And in this regard, and I would urge people who have dogs to see this, right? When I work with dogs and people come and say, I've done this for so long, but the dog is still, not better and the dog is not doing this. And I'm like, you're stuck on a goal, okay? And you're missing out something, which is that your dog is here now to enjoy today. This broken dog who does not know how to go on a walk, but he knows how to cuddle and curl with you. And you're not allowing that to happen because you're obsessed about, oh, we didn't go on a walk.
Yeah.
This dog who knows how to enjoy a meal with you, who knows how to get so excited and crunch and eat this cookies in front of you and act like a fool in front of you, you're missing all that out because the dog, you're like, the dog is not going for a walk
Yeah.
and the dog is, getting triggered outside. But the flip side of it, you are missing out on your dog because you want a goal. But your dog, on the other hand, isn't missing out on you. Your dog never is waiting for you to arrive at some perfect destination. Your dog is never
You're
expecting
perfect.
some
Yeah.
perfect version of you, right? You are perfect the way you are.
Yeah.
Every day you walk through the door is like,
Yeah.
yay, the best human being on earth has arrived through this door, right? And
Yes.
your dog is demonstrating to you what it means to
Yeah.
completely accept somebody with their imperfections and their fractures,
Yeah.
and to enjoy the today and the now. And look at a
Yeah.
street dog, right? How many times, Madhura, I've seen this traffic and this and that and this garbage, and this dog is sleeping in the sunlight with his belly up in the air, and I'm like, what a state of mind, man.
Yeah.
I want to
Yeah.
be in that state of mind where I don't have a thing working in my favor,
Yes.
but I have one spot of sunlight and I'm like, I'm catching this now. Right?
Yes.
And I think that's really the lesson for me
Yeah.
there is
Yeah.
to catch the journey, don't miss the journey.
Yeah. That's so beautiful, Sindhu. Thank you so much for saying it in the way you said it, because it's and the most important thing right now that the therapy world is learning and is dismantling is decolonizing therapy.
Yeah.
My traditional training is through psychology through my bachelor's, but I'm anti-pathology. Like
Yeah.
a client will come to me with a pathology, and I refuse to ever put them in that box. I know what they're saying, and
Yeah.
I know the symptoms. Sometimes some of the symptoms are quite severe, but the way I've been trained by my teachers and the lens through which we are looking is we're looking at human beings.
Yeah.
Well, like when we look at a child, we're looking at a child. We're not looking at a pathology and a
Yeah.
disease. I will not
Yeah.
see I refuse to give this disease center stage,
Yeah.
as opposed to the human who has shown up with me. And as you said, it's not about fixing. It's not about getting perfect. It's about growing around your wound and
Yeah.
living living and learning also to be able to inhabit your body,
Yeah.
inhabit your body that carries this history, or and I don't mean physical body, but like the soma, the energy body, the memories, the psyche, to really sort of grow around it and integrate your parts that had to disconnect for you to survive, and then you come together and you become more human in the process. It's not, I mean, I do therapy work with clients, but as you know from my sharing, I'm still healing from my wounds,
Yeah.
and I'm, still moving through a lot of grief, and we are all work in progress. So,
Yeah.
you know, uh, I was just saying that I was just talking to my mother about something about the village. My husband is from a village, so I said, they call somebody crazy, and I said, it's so funny in the village you can't call someone crazy and get away with it because it's such a small community. Everybody knows everyone's crazy.
Yeah.
So everyone has some different kind of crazy, right?
Yeah.
So I said, don't worry about it. Even if somebody thinks I'm crazy, we're all crazy,
Yeah.
and we need to destigmatize that because it's been held over and it's been used to control children, to control women, to control animals, where you say, oh, that's a problem. This is a
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's so, and just when you were talking about how it's such a colonial lens, I also remember something I read about how the British back in the day, not right now, but back in the day, raised their kids. The kids were wards, and the young boys were not boys, they were young gentlemen. They were supposed to behave a certain way and not be a nuisance and not be playful, not demonstrate emotions. I mean, is it a surprise that they would grow up to become what they would become, right? That
Yeah.
they have very little compassion and connection with the natural world, as opposed to a child growing up in the village or growing up in nature. You don't have to tell that child how to maintain boundaries because they know
Yeah.
there are snakes that can bite you. You climb the wrong branch, you'll be going to fall. So even with trees, you have these are natural boundaries that, like as you were just talking about, we've forgotten that exist for
Yeah.
our safety, for the safety of another, and to also have the situational awareness that someone else you're talking to is also a human being.
Yeah.
They have a history. How was their day? What state they are in when they left home? So this is,
Yeah.
and I find traffic brawls in Bangalore really funny because in India I've noticed, outside my
Yeah.
window there's at least 10 traffic brawls in a day, and most of them are people are taking the opportunity to let the steam
Yes.
off, but they
Yeah.
don't let it escalate.
Huh.
They also have the awareness to let it off and they go their way, especially because there's not enough time, there's not enough space to
Right.
turn it into a big fight. Even that for me, I see there's been some growth where people are like, I'm going to blow off some steam, but I won't let it escalate to a point where
Right.
there's something shifting. I don't know if it's just in my neighborhood, but I've seen that happen where people are suddenly catching themselves say, I will let it go this far but not beyond. How about we sort of bring that into our close, our communities, our apartment buildings, and these whatever they have, these committees
Yeah.
where people would be more aware, and
Yeah.
to have more healthy discussions, because this really directly impacts
Yeah.
animals. I mean, is it okay to talk a little bit about what the Supreme Court said and
Yeah.
how you've been part of it? You've been talking for our free living dogs. When the Supreme Court, the judge said this, where the dogs, he said, I don't know, it just sounded like a knee-jerk reaction of him having a bad day, if you ask me, for somebody who works as a trauma-aware person. Um, it just sounded like he was having a really bad day, and he made this, but he didn't realize the sweeping power that his words have, and how that impacted, and how and what you've been doing as a voice for these animals.
Yeah.
Can you say a little about that? Yeah.
Yeah, so the Supreme Court, the whole incident kind of started
Yeah.
around about a year ago, uh, where there was a suo moto action in the Supreme Court, which is that there wasn't really a case, but and this is such an interesting case to follow. Really, somebody should write a paper on it. Maybe I should. Um, uh, it was a case that a two member bench, 2 member bench, pulled up based on a newspaper, badly reported newspaper article, right? So now
Mm.
this is the first point where we raise an alarm, which is how can there be a Supreme Court action on a badly written, reported newspaper article?
Mm.
It should be based on science, based on
Yeah.
something that is, we're really entering the era of not knowing trusted sources of information anymore. It's really
Yeah.
fallen through the cracks, right? And then there was a lot of sort of wielding of power there, where there was a lot of statements being made, where there were no experts being brought in. With all due respect, the judges of the Honorable Supreme Court are experts on the matter of law, but not on animal behavior, not on ecology, not on ethology, not on urban planning, and those kind of fields. And so, or even diseases, epidemic diseases, and diseases like zoonotic diseases like rabies and things like that. And so much of the argument that was made was, hey, you need to really be pulling in the actual experts on this, because rabies numbers, for instance, is just being so badly reported. It is not correct. Dog bite numbers that is being reported is not correct. The numbers are partly underreported and partly overrepresented as well. So depending on where you're looking at, so not every
Yeah.
person who gets bitten is getting into the system and getting recorded, though that is getting much,
Mm.
much better. But also when a dog bites, it's not even a dog bite. Even if a dog, let's say, friendly and licks somewhere where there's a wound, you are required to take a rabies
Yeah.
vaccine, right?
Yeah.
And now it's not one vaccine, it's 3 to 5
Mm.
vaccines, depending on,
Mm.
where and how and protocol and so on and so forth. And if each
Mm.
of them is getting recorded as a bite and the dog just licked you in a friendly manner, that's highly problematic. And so
Yeah.
much of the cases that go and get the vaccines, the people who go and get the vaccines are actually people who
Yeah.
work with dogs. So it's not even like, a dog bit us
Yeah.
unprovoked. We were probably trying to poke, prod, something, do something with the dog. The dog bit or licked, and,
Yeah.
we don't have any qualms or complaints about it, but we have to
Oh,
register it in the
yes.
IDSP, and, that starts getting reported as bites.
Yeah.
And so those numbers are all over the place. And so you really need to be bringing in people who are experts on this, because rabies is a disease that needs to be addressed. India is not a rabies free country, and the WHO has a mandate to become rabies free by 2030, which we are not going to get to with the way we are progressing with things. And so
Yeah.
what is required, what harms that progress that we have made, what gets us there? For that, we have rabies experts in the country, but they were not involved. What causes bites, and how many bites are we actually seeing, and what is actually causing
Mm.
it? There's a really interesting statistic. In most of the Western countries where dogs are involved in bites, the individuals getting bitten are children, and they're getting bitten by dogs
Mm.
in the house, right? And even in
Yeah.
India, bites that happen inside the household are often children.
Mm.
But bites that happen outside on the streets, interestingly, is adult male.
Oh, interesting, isn't it?
Yes, yes. And that tells you who the provocateur is.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
tells you where the bite is coming from. It is
Yeah.
not dogs biting helpless individuals, it's dogs defending themselves towards the strongest. That's where the
Yes.
bites are directed, right? And so there needs to be a closer examination of what's really going on if we have to provide solutions. But that was not done. And that was the second problematic part of the whole Supreme Court dealings, which was we have entered an era, and India has always had a problem with this. I suppose we do this
Mm.
much worse than many other countries, which is we don't even seem to believe in experts. We're like, okay, let's just do this.
Yeah.
And, bringing the right experts in, the right process in, the right due diligence in, that doesn't say everything is jugaad, including our Supreme Court,
Yeah.
hearings seem to be jugaad, right? Like, this is
Yeah.
what I feel needs to be done. And let's
Yeah.
just do a quick solution. Let's just get rid of the dogs. And the argument that we were trying to make is you can't just get rid of the dogs. The British tried to get rid of dogs in the British Raj for over 200 years, and the dogs are still
Mm.
here, boss. They've not gone anywhere. It doesn't work
Yeah.
that way. There is a
Yeah.
reason why that doesn't work. And so we need to look at this differently. The
Yeah.
third thing that was, I think, problematic with the whole Supreme Court thing, which I don't know if it's of much interest to your audience, but
Mm.
there was also legal issues. The way this whole thing was done, a suo
Yeah.
motu case cannot be brought up unless there's a vacuum of law, and there isn't a vacuum of law when it comes to dealing with
Mm.
animals. India has a clearly defined law on this, and so unless there was a case, this should not have been brought up, which was, I think, the pushback that Prashant Bhushan brought up in the case. So this was also a very interesting case from the positive side of it, which I'll get in a bit, but so it exposed and these were some of the articles that were coming up, where that this is not really about a dog issue. This is a great it's a very telling commentary on the legal system in India and how it seems to be not functioning and falling apart, and no accountability for things that are not really following due diligence and the necessary process and the constitution of the country. So those are things that we should be worried about, whether we like dogs or not like dogs. It's a
Yeah.
whole other issue that needs
Yeah.
to be addressed. On the
Absolutely.
positive side, however, almost there were, I think, more than 200 people who pleaded in the court in favor of the dogs. And the judges commented that they had never seen this many people, even when a case with a human being, they had never seen this many people. The hearing went on for days and days and days, with hours and hours of on each day. And the almost all, if I'm not, I'm not saying all, because I didn't keep track of every one of them, but I think almost all the senior lawyers who were celebrity lawyers, your Prashant Bhushan and Kapil Sibal and all the big names that we've heard of, all of them defended the dogs pro bono. And there were just so many people who went to court defending these dogs. I think that is our heritage. When we talk about India, we have inherited both these parts of India, the part of India that tries to do jugaad in court, and then the part of India that will, step out and defend these dogs in these crazy large numbers. And these are not even the animals that we own. This is not our property, and we're defending an individual that we don't know, an individual who counts as nothing, right, to the rest of the world, seen as stray and matter out of place to the rest of the world, but we defended. That was interesting. And the other thing that was interesting, which I think you'll find very interesting, is so much of the pushback, whether it was protests on ground, fighting in court, so much of the pushback was female energy, mostly women. Fighting for the vulnerable seems to be something that we do. It seems to be the point at which we often find our spine, we find our voice, and we may not be good at defending ourselves, but we are bloody damn good at defending who we love.
I was just going to say that we're not always great at defending ourselves or speaking up for ourselves, but when we see,
Yeah.
I think children and animals, I've seen women really become very fierce, and
Yeah.
it's just so beautiful to hear that, because when I was growing up, Sindhu, when I was very young, I was so deeply affected by the injured stray animals, and I kept trying to rescue them, and I rescued a few. I would send them to Cuba and do all these things, and I would feel so helpless. But in just a matter of 10, 15 years, things changed in Bangalore because there were so many women activists,
Yes. Yeah.
like spearheading community action.
Yes.
Like there's so many women doing that, and it's just like you said, you don't have to give birth to be a mother. I mean, our
Yeah.
maternal instinct is so strong,
Yeah.
and to also know that these animals are very essential for our survival. Like you said, I
Yeah.
think it's also an instinct that
Yeah.
moved everyone to take action, because they are keeping balance. They
Yeah.
are keeping balance in the urban setting.
Yes.
They have evolved with us for centuries, as you spoke, and I think one of your students had shared on your Barks page about how she followed a dog. Just the dog just sleeping in this really busy market. They're
Yeah.
okay. Like you
Yeah.
don't. Nobody, and even people living in the market, they're not going to,
Yeah.
unless it's some delinquent young man who's having hormonal issues, no one is going to bother that dog, because I've
Yeah.
seen young boys bother
Yeah.
dogs.
Yeah.
Um, and I've also sort of told them, don't do that because
Yeah.
you know you'll get bitten. So
Yeah. Yeah.
don't do it.
Yeah.
But you see, people just know, people know how to coexist. So
Yeah.
it's not an issue.
Yeah.
And as you said, it's so interesting, isn't it, that a lot of the cases are male bites, because
Yes.
you see men being aggressive towards dogs.
Yes. 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 And
And
that is,
yeah,
sorry,
yeah,
that's, it's a very interesting thing that you bring up, because I do want to
yeah,
point out something that I think you'll find interesting as well. Um,
yeah.
when we were defending these dogs, so many people were coming and telling us, if you like them so much, take them to your house and feed them, right? And my
Mm,
pushback there was, how come your acts of violence, your acts of extraction and exploitation can be done openly in public and celebrated, but my acts of nurture, care, and compassion have to be hidden and done as, shamefully in private? This is again a
yeah,
very, um, you know, uh, sort of gender issues kind of come into
yeah,
play, and
yeah,
therefore dogs sit at the
yeah.
intersection of a lot of this thing,
Yes, yes,
which is that repeatedly acts of compassion, care, this feminine energy and expression of it is repeatedly shunned and shamed, and we are expected not to engage in it, while masculine, not male, but like masculine acts of
masculine. Yeah,
um violence, extraction, exploitation, and all of that is
yeah,
celebrated, right? You do it
yeah,
openly. So there's a
yeah,
parallel case going on in Morocco, and with the FIFA going in there, they're also killing dogs because of the World Cup, and their defense was an interesting one. They're like, the UN actually says that children have a right to not have to witness violence. They have a right to not have to normalize and witness violence on the streets. And the way you are catching these dogs and killing them so inhumanely in front of them, you are going to create a generation of traumatized people,
yeah,
and children have a right to not have to witness that. That is a international protection that we have to extend to
yeah,
children, which is a fair
yeah,
thing, right? And I think
yeah,
it's time that we start upholding those kinds of rights, which is to say, it's not
yeah.
just your right to own property
No,
and your right to extract it, your right to, get water and cut trees. That's not the only one worth protecting. How come we don't have protections around, you can't normalize violence like
no,
this, yeah,
no,
and say
no,
that you can
yeah,
do this outside, and my children
yeah,
have to watch that and grow. I mean, I have nieces, right? I
yeah,
I want them, I want to role model for them what I want them to grow
yeah,
into. I want them to witness the kind of things that is considered normal for them, and
yeah.
they should have access to be able to see what compassion looks like. This is not fair and right that, they're
Yes,
not no more able to witness what compassion looks like, what taking care of the vulnerable looks like, what having sensitivity towards the other, somebody who has nothing and showing
yeah,
up for them. Those things should not be witnessed at all. We're going
no,
to live in a clean world where everybody's driving fast cars and everything is a symbol of power and
yeah,
domination, and that is what they get to witness. That is what we call a clean
yes,
progressive society, right? No, I'm
yes.
sorry, but no, we got to
I
defend
agree.
against that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely agree with that. And in case anyone's wondering, oh, how much can a child get traumatized by
Oh,
watching that kind of violence? I am a child who watched, my dogs being beaten very badly because an adult could not, manage their emotions, and it was just a beating routine that would happen. It changes your worldview. It
yeah,
affects your development,
yeah,
your brain development. It makes you fearful, untrustworthy, and like every you will not trust anyone
yeah,
because you see somebody do this. It's a very long lasting impact, because even now, and that memory still makes me shudder.
yeah, yeah,
It changed the way I look at the world. and
yeah,
and when we talk about the masculine doing this, we're talking about the broken toxic
yeah,
masculine energy. And we're not talking about genders here, because
yeah,
there are
yeah,
many men also who are also victims of the same toxic masculine
yeah,
patriarchal oppression, because
yeah,
men are the first victims of
yeah,
patriarchy. You take men and you reduce them to subhumans,
yeah,
parts of themselves instead of acknowledging a whole human being.
Yeah.
So it's so important to acknowledge. And and what you said, that it should be a priority not to
Yeah.
inflict that kind of violence in the streets.
Yeah.
What are we showing? And it's, yeah, it just sort of, yeah, it just brought up those memories again for me.
Yeah.
So,
So I'm
I
so
just sort of,
sorry that
not at
that
all,
brought
not
it up
at all,
without
because I
warning.
think,
Yeah.
no, not at all. I think these are conversations that we need to have. And
Yeah.
for someone like me, I'm very present with a lot of awareness. So I'm present to those memories. I'm not looking to get rid of those memories, because that also continues to keep me in line, in the sense that I think of my fellow beings, and I know what the impact my presence can have on a child if a child is in the room,
Yeah.
because I was a child once, so I
Yeah.
know how sensitive I was.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think you have a valid point about this. I'm just thinking of this. If there's anything else that you'd like to share as we're
Yeah.
coming close to end
Yeah.
today's
Yeah.
yeah,
So I do want to, it's an interesting one that
yeah,
you brought up that I want to kind of also clarify. And I think this will be a
yeah,
nice place to kind of also end it is,
yeah,
I am not, though I brought up the idea of the feminine and the masculine energy. I'm not talking
yeah,
about men and women. Also
yeah,
because, for instance, my late husband, was so had so much great feminine energy within him, right?
yeah,
And this is a concept that in India embraces actually in some ways, and then also pushes back in some ways, which is the
yeah,
dichotomy of India. But the idea of
yeah,
the Shakti, right? That we all have those energies, and they function best when they are in collaboration with each other. There are
yeah,
times when I need to have this sort of strong masculine energy to push back on the
yeah,
world, but also a strong feminine energy to push back,
yeah,
not from a place of exploitation but a place of protection.
yeah.
So
Yes.
tying those two ideas together, Uttam was just such a great dad. Like he had that energy about him. He was so good,
Yeah.
and he was a very tall, big, strong person, and he became like that, I think, in his teenage itself. And he said, he told me once that at that point when I was a teenager, I realized that I was going to be a big strong person, and I could intimidate even my teachers very easily. And I had to ask myself who I wanted to be, whether I wanted
Mm.
somebody who would use this strength to intimidate, or I wanted somebody who wants to be loved and respected for who I am. And I took that decision. And I think that kind of mindful way of existing, which is to say, what is it I want to be? I have a abrasive side and ugly side, and then I have these gifts that can, be gifted to the world. And thinking about those, and especially around animals, and is such a interesting thing because they are vulnerable. And this is what I tell people: when you become mindful about how you want to deal with animals, you're asking yourself, how do I want to deal with the other and the vulnerable? And that eventually defines who you are as a person. That is what your offering to the world is. And so my invitation would be for people to ask yourselves those questions. With animals, you'll frequently find yourself in a position where you can easily exercise power, and there's nobody to bat an eyelid, right? A dog in the house, and you don't like what the dog is doing, it's very easy to say, hey,
Yeah.
I'll give you one, and nobody will bat an eyelid, right? But to stop and say, I am using my power here. Is there another way to do it? If you learn to do that, you might learn to do that with your partner. You might learn to do that with your child. You might learn to do that with your employee. You might learn to
Yes.
do that with somebody who has nothing and shows up at your door, and you know you have power, and you will mindfully use that power for good. And really, I wish that that's how we use the space that we have been given with animals to learn to bring out the best parts of us.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautifully said, Sindhu. So beautifully said. I had a teacher, a few years ago, she told me this, that, Shiva Shakti, the way we sort of have this understanding of Shiva Shakti, she said, Shakti is actually, she's the masculine, she's directional, and Shiva is
Mhm.
the feminine, he's the space. So
Nice.
you see how beautifully it's intertwined. A
Yeah.
woman in her healthy masculine is a balanced one, and a man in his healthy feminine is a balanced one.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm also really grateful to have a husband who's very much
Yeah.
in touch with his, healthy masculine and feminine, so
Yeah.
it's so beautiful. And you couldn't have said it better. You explained that so beautifully.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for holding
Yeah.
the space for me here.
Oh, thank you for coming on, Sindhoor. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.